everyone. Welcome to Getting Started with Amazon Workspaces webinar. My name is Deepak Suri. I will be your presenter today. We also have with us Olivia Shone and Salman Paracha, who will be helping moderate this session. So thank you so much, all of you who have already been waiting. We can get started now. A little bit of background about myself. I'm a product manager on the Amazon Workspaces team. I've been with Amazon for a little over 3 years and have spent most of my time at Amazon on the Workspaces service. Quickly, before we begin, I would like to walk the audience through a few items. On your screen, you can see a Q&A panel. You can submit your questions at any time during this webinar using this panel. Salman Paracha will answer as many questions as possible along with me during the Q&A. Towards the end of the webinar, there'll also be a live Q&A session, through which I will address some of the questions as well. Lastly, this webinar is being recorded. We will share the recording and the presentation slides via email a few days after the webinar. So with that, we have the housekeeping taken care of. So let's get started. Today, you'll hear an overview about Amazon Workspaces, the problems it's meant to solve, why we built the service, and also I will walk you through a brief demonstration of the service console and also the user experience where a user connects to a workspace. So first of all, why Workspaces? Amazon is a company where we listen very hard to our customers and build what customers are asking for. And some of the challenges we kept hearing from customers over the last few years was about virtual desktops. There are customers out there who are really bought into the virtual desktop dream, and we're trying to build VDI solutions or virtual desktop solutions on premises, but we're having challenges doing that. There were customers who really like the bring your own device model for their employees or their contractors and thought a VDI model could support that. We also had customers who had a diverse workforce where there could be users working from home, there could be contractors who would be seasonal, who would work only during the end of the year. We also had customers who had significant tablet adoption, and also there are customers who wanted a secure desktop where they could preserve all their data within a desktop and not allow the data to move around. These are all the challenges that customers were telling us about, and they thought a VDI solution could solve, but they were not having much success doing it on premises on their own. So when these were presented to us, we started thinking about Amazon Workspaces as a potential service to solve these problems. What are workspaces, or what is the workspace service? It's a hosted desktop service on the Amazon cloud. It has several benefits, starting from it's very simple to use. A customer can get started with Workspaces with just an account, an AWS account, simply with a credit card. Once they log in through the AWS console, they can get started with provisioning Workspaces. All of the heavy lifting, which is building the hardware and software, provisioning the hardware and software, is taken care of by the service behind the scenes. It's an on-demand pay-as-you-go model, which means that customers are not making upfront commitments on the service they're signing up for. They can simply launch as many workspaces as they need and scale over time. It's simple to use in the sense that it's also integrated with existing management tools. So workspaces can be joined to a customer's existing Active Directory and can be managed through that using existing policies. So to a customer, a workspace should not be any different from an existing desktop that they're supporting with their tools. Workspaces also supports familiar concepts like golden images, where you can take a workspace and customize it, make it a template that you can then use to deploy more workspaces across your organization. It's a very simple process, and I can demonstrate some of the capability on the console. But from an administrator's perspective, it just involves launching a workspace, adding customizations, installing your own applications within a workspace, and then from the console, opting to make that workspace the foundation for a golden image. And once a golden image becomes available, or we call it a custom image, then you can pair it with any hardware type, which we'll discuss. These are hardware bundle types, and you can launch workspaces from that. All right, so you can launch more workspaces from the bundles that you create. Workspace also supports multiple devices. This means that you can connect to your workspaces from different device types. We support all the popular platforms: PC, Mac, iOS, and Android, uh, and of course the Amazon Kindle. And we also support zero clients, which are purpose built clients that are meant to support uh, connection to VDI environments like workspaces. With workspaces, your data is both secure and available. Since we are only projecting pixels from the cloud into an end user's client device, no data is actually leaving the workspace itself. This can be fully configured as part of the workspaces service. The pixels are transmitted using a protocol called PCIP, or pixel compression over IP. It is a popular industry standard protocol that is used with other VDI environments. It is highly performant as well over a wide area network. So it does really well in our experience, even for customers who are connecting from thousands of miles away to their workspace. The workspace has a user volume that is backed up to Amazon S3, which has its own durability guarantees. So this means that for a for a workspace user, all of their data is backed up on a regular basis, and today it is on a 12-hour cycle where all the contents of their user profile, which includes their documents, settings, all of that is backed up every 12 hours. And in case there is an issue with, say, corruption of the data on the user side, or there is a hardware failure, which is unlikely, but if that happens, then a workspace can be restored from an from an existing image, and also the user's uh, profile can be restored from the last backup that was made. Following on keeping data secure and available, so a connection to a workspace can be secured. The login connection can be secured using a, a familiar concept, which is two-factor auth. So a customer can integrate their existing Radius environment with workspaces, so that when a user connects to a workspace using a Workspaces client, they will be prompted for both their username and password, and also a one-time key. This is set up so that it integrates with your existing Radius, which means that as long as there is a Radius server that is network reachable from the AWS environment, then this should be supported. I mentioned this a little earlier about bundles. The concept of bundles with workspaces is that there's a combination of hardware and software. There are three bundle types available: value, standard, and performance. With the value workspace, you get a single CPU and 2 GB of memory. We find that this is a good performance. Uh, it offers good performance for end users who have very light compute and memory requirements. We are running Windows here, so this is not ideal for, say, a knowledge worker situation where you might have a lot of apps open and have more stringent compute needs. But we find that this is ideal for a single browser tab or a single browser or a single app type environment. Standard is the next level up in terms of hardware types. This has two vCPUs and 4 GB memory. This is commonly used for knowledge workers. It does really well with Microsoft Office uh, and a number of apps that a user might use. The next level up from standard is performance. It has again two vCPUs, but more memory, almost twice the memory that the standard workspace bundle has. One thing I didn't call out was the storage available per user today is fixed and it changes by the bundle type. The value workspace bundle has 10 GB, the standard has 50 GB, and the performance has 100 GB. So this is separate from the root volume that is maintained for each workspace. All of this, all of the storage called out here is just for the user profile. So uh, theoretically, on a performance workspace, a user could have up to 100 GB of data stored that is their own. I also call out the pricing. More details on pricing is available on our website. You can find it from the Workspaces page on AWS.com. With the value workspace, this is the lowest price offering. It starts at $25, and the standard is $35, and the performance is $60. Uh, Aspect to bundles is there's also an opportunity to use the plus bundle along with value, standard, or performance. With the plus bundle, you would get Microsoft Office and Trend Micro and WinZip products included in the workspace by default. And the price for this and the price includes the license for using the software. Workspaces is fully integrated with or can be fully integrated with your Active Directory environment. This means if you have an Active Directory set up either on premises or on AWS, you can configure your Workspaces environment to connect to your Active Directory. This means that your Workspaces will show up as domain joined instances in your directory. Also, you can configure the setup of the workspaces so that they show up in a particular organizational unit in your directory. Users can log into their workspaces with their existing credentials. That's another advantage here. So there is no need to configure additional credentials just to use a workspace. And of course, as workspaces are integrated with your network environment and have access to your Active Directory, this also means that users can access any on-prem web applications or file shares using their workspace. I use an Amazon workspace myself as part of my job day to day. And when I do that, I can use from within my workspace, I can access all my internal tools at Amazon, access my file share, uh, use it just like I would a regular desktop, with the advantage that I can get to this workspace using different clients. I can use my iPad at home, or a Kindle at home, or I can also use a Mac when I'm at work. The Workspaces service is available globally. Uh, we are available in 6 regions today. In the US, it's in Virginia and Oregon, which pretty much covers, which will give very good performance for most users who are located in the continental United States, with very good latency, which means that protocol performance, pixel performance, will be really good for US based users. It's also available in other regions like Ireland, which is great for our European customers. And then in Asia region, we are actually in in Asia Pac, we are in 3 regions, Singapore, Japan, and uh, Sydney in Australia. I'm going to switch over to a demonstration. I'm actually going to walk you through some of the features of the management console for workspaces, how to launch a workspace, and also some of the configuration that is possible within the console for on a directory basis. So what you see here is the management console for workspaces. I'm not going to go through the first run experience, which is a very simple experience. If you just open an AWS account or you go to a region where you have not used workspaces previously, I'll just do this on the fly here. You'll see a slightly uh, different experience like this one here, where you press the get started now. I'll actually walk through that in just a few minutes. You can do a quick setup where you can say you want to launch a few workspaces very quickly. You can pick a bundle, add a username, create additional users. And then you can go in and launch workspaces. So this is a very simple getting started experience that you can try out, and you'll usually have your workspaces available for you within 20 minutes. I'll switch back to the larger console experience, which I have set up already in a different region. So here you see a workspaces tab. First of all, this is the main window where you see all the list of all the workspaces that you have currently running. For each workspace, you can take actions. Now, if you were to launch a new workspace, you'd start over here. This is the broader experience with the console, not the getting started experience. I can pick a directory, in which case this is a directory that is already set up. It is actually using an AD connector or Active Directory connector, which is available to connect to your on-premises Active Directory environment. And I can then search for users that are available in that Active Directory. I picked Varun, and I add Varun to the list of users I want to provision a workspace for. Click next, and then I can see the list of bundles that are available to me. So there are existing bundles that are published by the Workspaces service. For example, there's Standard Plus with Office 2010, Standard Plus with Office 2013, or just a base bundle, Standard, which I could launch and then install my own software on. Let's pick Standard in this case. This gives you the details over here for what the Standard bundle contains. It is going to give you a Windows 7 experience, 2 vCPUs, 4 gig memory, 50 GB storage, and it costs $35 per month in Oregon region. One of the things I didn't call out earlier was that a workspace, once it's launched, is a virtual machine per user. So there is a one-to-one mapping between users, between a user, a workspace, and the underlying virtual machine. So when you see 2 vCPU, 4 GB memory, that's all of that belongs to a single user. So now that I've selected a standard bundle, and let me go ahead and launch a workspace for Varun here. See, workspace will launch in the Oregon region, and it just takes a few minutes for the new workspace I launched to show up here. But while that comes up, let me also switch to, okay, actually this one's here. This is the one that is being provisioned for Varun. All the details get populated very quickly. You see that it has gone into a pending state. And what happens behind the scenes is we are launching Amazon EC2 instances, or an instance in this case, provisioning storage for this user, Varun. It'll be 50 GB of storage. And also, once the instance comes up and the storage is provisioned, the instance is joined to the Active Directory that I'd pointed this workspace to. So it'll be domain joined, and once the status over here goes to running, I can actually let Varun know details for logging into the workspace. More about that later. I'll just walk through a few more details on the Workspaces console. There is the Directories tab, which lists the Active Directories that I have configured. In this case, internal.exampleco.com is an example FQDN for a directory that I have set up. This is actually an AD connector, which means that I'm able to use the AD connector to retrieve users group information from the Active Directory, and also provision workspaces that will be joined to this directory. And within a directory, I can have additional configurations. For example, I can look for OUs. Actually, I'll just list all OUs here. This shows all the organizational units that are available within my Active Directory. I can place all my workspaces in these OUs. There's a concept of security group over here, which is similar to the security groups that are available in Amazon Virtual Private Cloud, or VPC. This gives you a way to secure access from the workspace to your internal resources, where you might have limits on, say, a user having access to only some servers on premises or a certain IP range. Then you can set that up using security groups here. This will be applied to any workspace that is launched as part of this directory. If you have a configuration where you want the internet access from a workspace to be always enabled, then you can set it up here. So this depends on the type of environment that you have on Amazon. So if you want your workspaces internet traffic when someone visits an external site like www.amazon.com, if you want that request to go directly from Amazon through uh, features available via the VPC, then you can do that here. You can enable it. But if you have an on-premises firewall and you have a firewall set up on premises through which all your traffic needs to go out on, then you would disable this here and set it up on your own. The AD connector account is a service account that will be provisioned as part of your Active Directory and can be is actually used as part of the domain join process. So when an instance comes up, we use the AD connector account to actually do the domain join. Also, this is the account that is used to retrieve users, list users, and group information. All the account needs in terms of permissions is ability to list users and groups and also do domain join operations. There is also multi-factor auth that you can set up, which I referred to earlier. This is setting up your environment to work with Radius that is available from within your VPC. So you can point to a Radius configuration here by entering in an IP address, of course, and entering in the rest of the information. Once this gets set up, all of the user's connection will always be through a two-factor auth. I'm going to continue on with the Workspaces console demonstration. So you just looked at the Directories tab, where you could see information about the directory and also configure the directory for different use cases like MFA, adding more security to your workspaces so that you can limit access to internal resources, and also configure organizational units for putting your workspaces in. The other big concept with workspaces, of course, the topic of custom images, or also a more familiar term is golden images. So from any workspace, you can actually create a custom image. So if I go back to the Workspaces tab here, I can select a workspace. In this case, I've created a special workspace. I created it for an imaging user and installed software on it, added a, a popular browser, configured a desktop with my favorite wallpaper, and then I could create an image. So I'll just come back to the console once I've done the customization on a workspace and then go through a create image process. At the end of this process, what becomes available is a workspaces image that shows up over here. And this image is just a software configuration. It's of course the OS plus the customizations that you would have added. You can then create a bundle from this image where you combine the image with a hardware type. So I can create a bundle type on the fly. So let me do that over here. Let's call it something. I can pair it with any hardware type. So it's here, software customizations paired with any bundle type. And you can create this bundle type, and of course with workspaces you can use the bundle, and then let's see, it should show up here. So here it is, example webinar. I can then select this bundle and launch workspaces from this. It'll show up here with you just went through this already, but I'll go through it again. So I can select a user, Varun again, and uh, I can look for the bundles that I've created. So I just selected custom bundles, and here it is, example webinar. I can then select this bundle and launch workspaces from it. Okay, so that's most of the functionality that we have with the Workspaces console today. There's a few more concepts like how do you keep your bundles updated with latest images, how do you uh, manage patches, but I'll leave that for a later webinar. I want to switch to another view to give what users would go through when they connect to their workspace. All right, so this is the Workspaces client. A user will download a Workspaces client from clients.amazonworkspaces.com. You can see the page automatically detected that I'm on my Mac. I can download the Workspaces client. Takes less than a minute or so. Once the client is available, I can of course install the client, and this first screen I'll go through is actually a registration screen. When I first launch the client, I would enter a registration code. This is actually made available in most cases when so once a workspace gets provisioned, this registration code is emailed to the user along with information for setting up their credentials. Uh, in case we have set up an Active Directory for them as part of the service. But usually if this is configured as part of an existing Active Directory, all that an IT admin needs to tell the user is, here is a place to go download a client, which is client.amazonworkspaces.com, and also here is a registration code that you should enter into the Workspaces client. So in this case, I'll enter a registration code, and what this does is it's linking my client to the directory in which my workspaces are configured. So at this point, when I try to log in with my username, which is dsurian here, and enter my password, the client talks to the workspaces service, and the workspaces service then figures out, okay, it's for a particular directory, this is the user, uh, I know which workspace I need to connect you to. First, let me authenticate, and before that, of course, let me authenticate the credentials. And once the credentials are authenticated, a connection will come up. Uh, I'll point out, before I log into a workspace, I'll point out some of the features here within the client which are very useful to our customers when they're getting started. Uh, at the bottom of the client, you see this network tab. If I click on this, what it tells me is to my workspace, or actually from my client to my workspace, is a connection going to be possible. First of all, it checks whether there's a network connection available. So if I turn off my network, then this will go to red. Actually, I think it'll be an exclamation. So you can see what this does. It's saying that my device is connected to the network. Uh, I also have internet connectivity. So we are checking if a popular public website is accessible from the client. And then we are also checking if our registration service, the piece that tells us which directory the user is going to connect to, that portion is available and reachable. This is actually an access to Amazon S3. So we're just checking if a particular bucket on Amazon S3 is available for access from this client. The Workspaces service is reachable, which means it can talk to our uh, the the public service that is used to, that determines where the user will connect to for their workspace. And the most important piece here, which I've seen customers run into issues with a lot, is around access to these two ports, TCP 4172 and UDP 4172. Uh, it, we have commonly found that some customer networks block out TCP and UDP 4172, and to connect to a workspace, you would have to enable outbound access to UDP and TCP 4172. In this case, I'm on the internal network here at Amazon, and I can, and these ports are available for me. So if this were not available, then you would see red indicators over here. And finally, the round trip time. I'm connecting to a workspace that is hosted in the Oregon region, and you can see it's a very short network hop from where I am. So it's just 10 milliseconds round trip time. This becomes useful if let's say a user is connecting from a faraway region to their workspace. They can tell what their experience is going to be like from their round trip time. So going back to the login screen, log in here. There is a remember me feature on the client so that I don't have to enter my credentials every time. These credentials are remembered for up to 8 hours, which of course can be configured. And the next time I come back to the client, I won't have to log in again if I'm connecting within a few hours. But let's say I do want to remember um, my credentials. This is now launching my session. At this point, I authenticated into a workspace, uh, into my service, so into the workspace service, and then connected to the workspace. What you see on the screen right now is my Amazon workspace that I had already provisioned for myself. As you can see, it looks and feels just like a Windows desktop that you would expect. It's provisioned for me. I'm the only user on it. If I go into users, I can also see how, let's see, if I go back here and trying to pull up my computer. There it is. Okay, so it's actually a performance workspace which I had provisioned. I can see the system properties. It is running Windows Server, but is made available as a Windows 7 experience, as you can see. It's already activated. If I go back to system properties, you can also see other information here, like how much memory I have, which is the 7.5 gig that I had pointed out earlier. Okay, I'll just switch out of this, and because there's access to the internet from within the workspace, you can configure this in different ways. You can go out to the internet directly from your Amazon VPC. You can set it up with an internet gateway on your VPC, or you can also have a firewall on-prem through which you can secure your outbound internet connections. Right. So I'm going to point out a few useful resources on Workspaces as just going back here to the Amazon Workspace. I just wanted to point out a few resources that are available. There's of course the main web page that talks about Amazon Workspaces. There's FAQ page with a list of all the common questions that are asked about Workspaces. You can also find the pricing page, which has list of all the prices by region. Also, one of the things that I point customers to often in terms of advanced configuration is our documentation. So if you just Google for Workspaces documentation, the administration guide has more information on how you get started with Workspaces and what are the more advanced configurations. For example, uh, one of the things that customers ask about a lot is how does the overall setup work with networking. I just want to point that out. Let's see here. Started, setup. So setting up over here, no, this is the link I was looking for, I'm sorry. So preparing your network, this tells you all the prerequisites that you need for your network and for example, how to set up your public IP addresses, how to set up your AD connector, how does the overall connection process work when you're in different environments, how do you get to your workspace. So this is all very helpful information. You can search for it just as AWS Workspace documentation and you should be able to find this. It'll also be on the last slide that we'll show. Looks like we have more questions. I'm just going to check in. There's a question on whether multiple users can sign into their workspaces concurrently. The answer today is no. Each workspace is dedicated to an individual user. It's each user's own cloud desktop. This is not running term services where it's multiple users can connect to the same virtual machine. We believe this provides the best performance and security boundary per user.
Next question from Hope Jovan. How much bandwidth is necessary per user to use Workspaces?
Okay, so the question was how much bandwidth is necessary to use a workspace? The answer is really it depends, but practically speaking, if for a workspace for a user who doesn't have much activity going on the screen, let's say I'm just typing text, in that case it's going to be in the tens of kilobits or peaking to maybe 100 to 200 kilobits. But if there is a lot of activity going on the screen, which means I'm switching between browser windows, switching between multiple applications. For example, I'm going between Word and Excel and my Outlook experience, then each context switch is really a redraw of the entire screen, which means there's pixels being transmitted on each context switch, a lot of pixels being transmitted, which means more bandwidth. So when there's a lot of activity going on the screen, the usage can peak to a meg or more. Okay, so switching back to the documentation, you can find this information here, and there'll also be links on the last slide that will be available that point you to these documents. Also, a link on the slide will be a YouTube video that you can watch for advanced configuration. It shows the overall network setup for workspaces. If you're interested in what type of how the traffic flows to a workspace, both the pixel connection and internet connection, that is all discussed on that YouTube video, which is it's a capture of our presentation from AWS reInvent in November last year. So I just want to check in if there are more questions. Looks like we have a large number of questions out there. I'm sorry, I'll apologize in advance because we won't be able to get through all of them, but I'm going to try and get a few. So if you want a question from Steve is if I create a workspace for a user, delete it after 30 minutes and launch it again, will the user build again? So will there be charge for two workspaces? So here is when it is only a single workspace charge. So if you create a workspace for a user from a bundle type, let's say it is a standard bundle, and then you delete it and you recreate for that same user from that same bundle in the same region, then there is no additional charge. So there's a subscription that is valid for the rest of the month that is tied to a particular user and a bundle type. So you can delete and recreate the workspace for that same user and you wouldn't be charged again. There's a question on why the memory is 7.5 gig on the performance bundle. So the workspace itself is hosted on underlying EC2 instance types. So if you're familiar with Amazon EC2, the instance type here is we are using is an M3 large instance, and it's just tied to that profile, which is 2 vCPU and 7.5 gig.